My name is Brittany Foster, and at 28 years old, I never imagined I'd be the one to unravel my family's polished image at our annual gathering. My dad always introduced me as just a security guard, his tone heavy with disappointment, as if my career protecting people was beneath his CEO status. He dreamed of me in corporate suites, not securing them. But at that family party, everything shifted when my actions hit the news, exposing the secrets he'd hidden for years. The look on his face when my sister shouted, "Oh my God, she's on the news," is something I'll never forget. Just moments before my dad had told everyone she's just a security guard with that familiar, dismissive shrug. I met his eyes, held his gaze with a quiet smile, and in that silence, everything in the room shifted. Before I dive into how I brought his lies to light, I want to know what time it is, where you're watching, and which city you're in. I'm thrilled to see how far my story reaches. No one there could have imagined what was about to come next. Growing up, I always knew my dad, Michael Grant, cared more about his image than his family. He built a fortune as a CEO of a Los Angeles finance firm where success meant power connections and a mansion in Brentwood. Our family photos were staged perfection, his idea of a legacy. But behind the glossy exterior, things were messier. When I was 12, my parents' marriage fell apart. My mom, a high school English teacher, couldn't keep up with his obsession for wealth. Dad manipulated the divorce settlement, leaving her with barely enough to cover rent in a cramped Culver City apartment. I spent weekdays with her, soaking in her warmth and stories, and weekends in his cold, sprawling penthouse where I felt like a guest who'd overstayed. The divorce wasn't just a split, it was a betrayal. Mom later told me Dad hid assets, twisted legal loopholes to keep the lion's share. It broke her, but she never let me see her cry. I carried that anger quietly, even as Dad remarried Kimberly, a socialite who glided through his elite circles like she was born for it. She played the part of stepmom, but her smiles never reached her eyes. My sister, 2 years older, tried to bridge the gap, always pushing for family unity. She'd say, "Brittany, just talk to Dad, he'll come around." But his expectations were clear. I was supposed to follow his path, maybe a finance degree, a corner office. When I chose a different route, he acted like I'd thrown away his legacy. After high school, I didn't go to the Ivy League schools he bragged about to his friends. Instead, I studied criminal justice at a state college, paying my way with part-time security gigs. I loved the work, protecting people, reading situations, staying one step ahead. After graduation, I joined Pacific Shield Security, a top firm in LA, specializing in high-profile event protection and fraud detection. I'd led operations for tech moguls, even caught a corporate espionage attempt last year, earning a quiet nod from my boss. But to Dad, none of it mattered. Security guard, he'd call me, as if I patrolled a mall with a flashlight. His words stung, but I pushed forward, proving my worth to myself. Last month, everything changed. I was visiting Mom in her modest apartment, helping her sort through old paperwork when she dropped a bombshell. "Brittany," she said, her voice low, "your dad's been hiding something big." She pulled out a folder of emails she'd kept from years ago when she worked part-time at his firm's charity arm. They showed Dad funneling donations meant for underprivileged kids into offshore accounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned off while he played the philanthropist. Mom had kept quiet, afraid of his influence, but she couldn't hold it in anymore. "He's still doing it," she whispered. "I heard he's planning something at the family party." My blood boiled. All those years of his smug superiority, dismissing my career while he stole from people who trusted him, it was too much. I sat there staring at the emails, my hands shaking. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. Mom's eyes were heavy. "I didn't want you caught in his world, honey, but you're strong enough now." She was right. I wasn't that 12-year-old kid anymore, watching her struggle while Dad lived like a king. This wasn't just about proving him wrong, it was about justice. My sister called, a week later, her voice bright. "Sis, you're coming to the family party at the Malibu resort, right? It's a chance to fix things with Dad." She didn't know about the emails, didn't see the storm coming. I played along, saying I'd think about it, but my mind was already racing. The party was Dad's annual show-off, packed with his wealthy friends and business partners, a perfect stage to expose him. I called Mom again that night, double-checking the details. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, worry in her voice. "He's powerful, Brittany." I gripped the phone, my resolve hardening. "He's not untouchable, Mom. Not anymore." I spent the next few days digging deeper, reaching out to my boss, a guy who'd dealt with corporate fraud before. He didn't ask too many questions, just said, "If you've got evidence, I can help you access his systems discreetly." That was all I needed. The party was in 2 days, and I wasn't going to let Dad's lies hide in the shadows any longer. His perfect image, his dismissive sneers, they were about to come crashing down, and I'd be the one holding the wrecking ball. 2 days before the family party, I pulled into the Malibu Resort's driveway, my stomach twisting with a mix of nerves and determination. The plan was set: get in, find hard evidence, and expose Dad's lies at his own event. I'd packed light an overnight bag, a sleek black dress for the party, and my laptop with encrypted software. Matthew, my boss, had set up for me. He'd warned me over the phone last night, "Michael's careful, Brittany. His systems are locked tight, but I'll guide you remotely if you get access." His voice was steady, like he knew exactly what kind of man my father was. The resort was buzzing when I arrived, with staff setting up for the big weekend. I checked in at the front desk, my eyes scanning the lobby for familiar faces. Dad was there, standing tall in a tailored blazer, shaking hands with a group of suited men, his business partners, no doubt. Kimberly was at his side, her designer dress catching the light, her smile polished but cold. I took a deep breath and walked over, bracing myself for what was coming. "Brittany," Dad called out, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "You made it." His tone was polite, but the quick glance he gave me said it all: disappointment as usual. He turned to the group. "This is my daughter. She's a security guard." The words landed like a slap, reducing my career to a job title that didn't even fit. I forced a smile, my jaw tight. "Nice to see you too, Dad," I said, keeping my voice even. Kimberly chimed in, her lips curling slightly. "It's so practical what you do." The men chuckled awkwardly, and I felt my cheeks burn. I wanted to snap back, but I held it in. This wasn't the time. I excused myself and headed to my room, dropping my bag on the bed. My phone buzzed, sis checking in. "You okay?" Ashley's text read. "Dad's in a mood, but he's glad you're here." Glad, sure. Glad to parade me as his failure in front of his elite crowd. I texted back, "I'm fine. See you at dinner." But I wasn't fine. I was furious, and that anger fueled my focus. Tonight was the rehearsal dinner, a smaller gathering before the main party. If I was going to get into Dad's laptop, it had to be soon. The rehearsal dinner was in a private room overlooking the ocean, with long tables covered in crisp white linens and centerpieces that screamed money. I wore a simple navy dress, professional but understated, hoping to blend in. My place card put me at a corner table, far from Dad and Kimberly's spotlight. As I sipped water, keeping my head clear, Dad approached with a couple in tow, an older man in a suit and his wife dripping in pearls. "This is my daughter," he said, his smile tight. "She's in security. Not a specialist, not a professional, just security, like I checked IDs at a club." The couple nodded politely, clearly unsure what to say. "That's interesting," the woman managed, before Dad steered them away to meet someone more important. I clenched my napkin, my resolve hardening. This was why I was here: not to play nice, but to end his charade. After dinner, as guests mingled, I slipped out, heading for the resort's business center, where Dad often worked during these trips. Matthew had given me a USB drive with software to bypass basic encryption, and I knew Dad's habits: he never logged out properly. The center was quiet, just a night clerk who barely glanced up. I found an empty workstation plugged in the drive and called Matthew. "I'm in," I whispered. "He's got his laptop in his suite, but I can access his cloud if you guide me." Matthew's voice was calm but urgent. Check for two-factor authentication. He's paranoid about leaks. I followed his instructions, my fingers flying over the keys. After 10 tense minutes, I was in a folder labeled Charity Accounts stared back at me. My heart raced as I opened it, finding emails between Dad and a shady offshore contact confirming transfers of donations meant for kids' programs. One email dated last week mentioned a final move at the party, hundreds of thousands funneled away. This was it, the smoking gun. I copied the files to my drive, my hand steady despite the adrenaline. As I logged out, I heard footsteps. I spun around expecting a staff member, but it was Ashley. "Brittany, what are you doing?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. She'd followed me from the dinner, sensing something was off. "Sis, go back to the party," I said, keeping my voice low. "This isn't your fight." She crossed her arms, skeptical. "You're up to something. Tell me or I'll ask Dad." I hesitated, then decided to trust her just enough. "Dad's not who you think he is," I said. "I'll explain later, but I need you to trust me." Ashley studied me, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but you better not be reckless." She left, and I exhaled, the weight of the evidence sinking in. I had what I needed to ruin him, but it wasn't enough to just have it. I had to use it. Tomorrow was the party, and every guest would see Michael Grant for what he truly was. I slipped back to my room, the USB drive heavy in my pocket, my mind racing with what came next. I wasn't just a security guard, I was the one who'd bring him down. The morning of the family party dawned bright and clear, but my nerves were on edge as I dressed for the day. The USB drive with Dad's incriminating emails sat heavy in my pocket, a reminder of what was at stake. The resort was alive with preparations, staff hustled with trays of champagne flutes, and the main event space was decked out with sleek decor for Dad's annual show-off. I wore my black dress, professional yet sharp, ready to blend in while I waited for my moment. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to end his lies. As guests arrived, I scanned the crowd, spotting a man in a staff uniform who didn't fit. His jacket was too loose, his movements too deliberate, like he was studying the room rather than serving it. I recognized the pattern from my training, someone covering tracks, not pouring drinks. My gut told me he was tied to Dad's scheme, likely one of his fixers moving money under the radar. I kept my distance, watching as he whispered to another staff member with the same calculated alertness. They were planning something, probably to bury the evidence I'd found last night. I mingled with the guests, keeping up appearances while my mind raced. Dad was in his element, charming a group of investors with his usual charisma. Kimberly stood beside him, laughing at his jokes, her diamond earrings catching the light. I caught Ashley's eye across the room. She gave me a worried look, like she sensed trouble brewing. "Sis, you good?" she mouthed. I nodded, but my focus was elsewhere. I needed to get to the event's control room, where the presentation screens were managed to prepare for my move. Before I could slip away, Dad pulled me aside, his grip firm on my arm. "Brittany, we need to talk," he said, his voice low, eyes cold. He led me to a quiet corner near the bar, away from the crowd. "I know you've been poking around in things that don't concern you," he said, his tone sharp. "Whatever you think you found, drop it. Now." My heart pounded, but I held his gaze. He knew I had something. Maybe he'd noticed the laptop access. Maybe his fixer tipped him off. "Dad, I know about the charity funds," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The emails, the offshore accounts. It's over." His face hardened, a flash of panic in his eyes before he masked it. "You're out of your depth, Brittany. You're a security guard, not a detective. Keep this up, and you're done. No family, no inheritance, nothing." The threat cut deep, but it only fueled my resolve. "Here's the deal," I said, stepping closer. "You turn yourself in by the end of this party, or I show everyone those emails. Your choice." His jaw clenched, but before he could respond, a commotion broke out near the main stage. The man I'd spotted earlier was arguing with a guest, his voice rising, drawing attention. Another staff member, his accomplice, moved toward the control room, likely to sabotage any evidence. The crowd murmured confused as the first man shoved the guest, causing a tray of glasses to crash to the floor. My training kicked in. I moved toward the stage, weaving through startled guests, my eyes locked on the fixer. "Stay back," he barked, noticing me, his hand twitching toward his pocket. No weapons. I'd checked the room's security protocols, but he was ready to escalate. I didn't hesitate. Using a technique from my Pacific Shield training, I closed the distance, grabbed his wrist, and twisted it just enough to make him wince, forcing him to step back. "You're done," I said, my voice low but firm. The second fixer lunged toward me, but I sidestepped, using his momentum to push him into a table. Guests gasped, backing away as I held the first man in a controlled grip. "Call security," I told a nearby staff member, who nodded wide-eyed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Matthew texting, "Cops are 10 minutes out. Stall them." I glanced at the control room where the presentation screens were still active. The fixers were trying to stop me, but I was one step ahead. I released the man, letting security take over, and made my way to the control room door. Ashley grabbed my arm, her face pale. "Brittany, what the hell are you doing?" she hissed. "Sis, trust me," I said, shaking her off. "This is bigger than you know." Inside the control room, a tech was setting up Dad's speech slides. "I need access to the main screen," I told him, flashing my Pacific Shield ID. He hesitated, then stepped aside. I plugged in my USB drive, the emails ready to load. My hands shook slightly, not from fear but from the weight of what I was about to do. Dad's voice carried from the stage, starting his welcome speech, all charm and lies. I glanced at the monitor, seeing him smile at the crowd, oblivious to what was coming. Kimberly was near him, whispering to a guest, her eyes darting toward me. She knew something was wrong. Maybe Dad had warned her. The fixers were detained by security now, but the tension in the room was electric. Matthew texted again. "Cops are close." "You sure about this?" I typed back. No turning back. The screens were mine, the evidence was loaded, and the crowd was waiting. Dad's perfect world was about to shatter, and I was ready to light the fuse. The presentation screens flickered as I hit enter, my heart pounding in my chest. The control room was a blur of monitors and cables, but my focus was razor-sharp on the main display in the event hall. Dad's voice echoed through the speakers mid-speech, touting his commitment to charity to a crowd of investors and friends. I took a deep breath and uploaded the first email, a damning exchange between him and his offshore contact detailing the siphoning of hundreds of thousands from the charity fund. The screen lit up with the evidence, and the room fell silent. Gasps rippled through the crowd as guests read the words projected above Dad's head. "Transfer completed, $250,000 to Cayman account," one line read, signed with his initials. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to outright shock. A woman in a silk dress pointed at the screen, her voice sharp. "Is this real, Michael? What is this?" Another guest, a gray-haired man in a suit, stood up, his face red. "You've been stealing from kids' programs?" The room erupted in chaos, with accusations flying like daggers. Dad froze at the podium, his charm evaporating. "This is a mistake," he stammered, his eyes darting to me in the control room doorway. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "No mistake, Dad. Those are your emails, your accounts. You've been lying for years." The crowd's outrage grew louder, some pulling out phones to record, others demanding answers. Kimberly rushed to his side, her face pale but her voice shrill. "This is outrageous, Brittany. You're embarrassing your father." Then she slipped her words, betraying her. "We had to protect the firm's reputation." The crowd turned on her, realizing she'd known about the scheme. "Protect," I shot back, stepping into the hall. "You helped him hide it, Kimberly. You both profited while Mom struggled." The mention of Mom hit hard, and I saw Ashley standing near the back, her eyes wide with shock. She mouthed, "Sis, you did this?" I nodded, holding her gaze, willing her to understand. Dad tried to regain control, his voice shaking. "This is a misunderstanding. I'll explain everything privately." But the guests weren't buying it. A man in a tux shouted, "Explain it now, Grant. You've been fleecing us. The room was a powder keg and I'd lit the fuse. Suddenly, one of Dad's fixers, the man I'd subdued earlier, broke free from security, lunging toward the control room to shut down the screens. I moved fast, intercepting him, with a practice block twisting his arm to keep him down. Another accomplice grabbed my shoulder, trying to pull me away, but I shook him off my training, keeping me calm. My elbow grazed a table edge in the scuffle, leaving a light scratch on my arm, but I barely felt it. "Stay down," I warned, pinning the first man until security dragged him away. The crowd watched, some filming, others whispering my name. As security cleared the fixers, I glanced at the screen, still looping the emails. My phone buzzed. Matthew texting, "Cops are here. Press is outside." I stepped back to the control room, ensuring the evidence stayed live. The resort's AV team, stunned but cooperative, kept the screens running. Outside, I heard sirens, and through the windows I saw news vans pulling up. The story was breaking faster than I'd expected. Ashley pushed through the crowd, her face a mix of awe and fear. "Brittany, it's on the news," she shouted, pointing to a guest's phone streaming a live report. "Oh my God, she's on the news!" Her voice cut through the chaos, echoing the moment I'd planned for. The news anchor's voice blared from the phone: "Breaking charity fraud exposed at elite Malibu event. Security expert Brittany Foster uncovers evidence against CEO Michael Grant." The crowd turned to me, some applauding, others staring in disbelief. Dad slumped against the podium, his face ashen, his empire crumbling in real time. "Brittany," he croaked, barely audible. Why? I met his eyes, my voice cold. "Because you hurt people, Dad. You hurt Mom. You hurt me, and you thought you'd get away with it." Kimberly grabbed his arm, her composure gone. "You've ruined him," she hissed, but her words were drowned out by the crowd's anger. A woman in pearls approached me, her voice trembling. "You did the right thing. He fooled us all." Another guest, a tech investor, nodded. "I trusted him with millions. Thank you." Their words felt like vindication, but the weight of Dad's betrayal still pressed on me. Ashley reached my side, her hand on my arm. "Sis, I didn't know it was this bad," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm with you." The police entered, moving toward Dad and Kimberly. An officer approached me, respectful. "Miss Foster, we need your statement. Those emails are enough for charges." I nodded, handing over my USB drive, my arm stinging slightly from the scratch. The news cameras outside were rolling, capturing the fallout. Dad's eyes met mine one last time, a mix of shame and defeat, but I felt no pity. He'd built this mess, and I'd torn it down. The scandal was out, and there was no going back. As the police led Dad away from the event hall, the weight of what I'd done settled over me like a fog. The crowd's murmurs faded, replaced by the hum of news vans outside, their cameras flashing through the resort's windows. My arm stung from the scratch I'd gotten in the scuffle, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. I'd exposed him just as I'd planned, but the victory felt hollow. Ashley stood beside me, her hand gripping mine. "Sis, you were incredible," she said, her voice shaky but proud. I managed a nod, but my eyes were fixed on Dad. His shoulders slumped as he disappeared through the doors. Kimberly lingered near the stage, her face a mask of fury and desperation. "You've destroyed everything," she hissed as she brushed past me, her heels clicking toward the exit. I didn't respond. She'd known about his schemes, maybe even helped cover them up, and now she was scrambling to save herself. I heard later she left town the next day, cutting ties with Dad's sinking ship. The guests dispersed, some whispering apologies, others avoiding my gaze. The woman in pearls approached again, her voice soft. "You did what none of us could. Thank you." Her words were kind, but they didn't erase the years of dismissal I'd endured. I gave my statement to the police in a quiet office off the lobby, my voice steady as I handed over the USB drive. The officer, a stern woman with a notepad, said, "This evidence is airtight, Miss Foster. He's facing serious charges, embezzlement, fraud, maybe more." I nodded, the reality sinking in. Dad's empire was crumbling, and I'd been the one to swing the hammer. As I left the office, my phone buzzed. Matthew, my boss calling. Brittany, you okay? He asked. The news is everywhere. Pacific Shield's getting calls from clients praising you. I forced a smile he couldn't see. I'm fine, Matthew. Just tired. By the next morning, the story had gone viral. My phone lit up with notifications, texts from mom colleagues, even old classmates. Hero security expert exposes CEO fraud. One headline read, paired with shaky footage of me confronting Dad's fixer in the hall. Mom's voicemail was the hardest to hear. Honey, I saw the news, she said, her voice thick. I'm so proud, but I'm worried about you. Call me. I did later that day, sitting on my hotel bed, the ocean view outside, doing nothing to calm me. Mom, I had to do it, I told her. For you, for me. She sighed. I know, Brittany. You're stronger than I ever was. Ashley came to my room that afternoon, her eyes red but resolute. I should have seen it sooner, she said, sitting beside me. Dad's lies, how he hurt Mom. I thought we could fix things. I squeezed her hand. Sis, you couldn't have known. But you're here now. We sat in silence, the bond between us stronger than ever. I knew then I didn't need Dad's approval or his world. I had Mom Ashley and my own path. A week later, I was back in LA trying to piece my life together. The news cycle had moved on, but Dad's case hadn't. Prosecutors were building a case, and his firm was under investigation. I read in an article he'd hired a top lawyer, but the evidence was too damning. I didn't care about his fate anymore. I'd spent years chasing his respect only to realize it was worthless. Kimberly sent a cold email blaming me for tearing the family apart. I deleted it without replying. She wasn't my family, Mom and Ashley were. My work at Pacific Shield took off. Matthew called me into his office, a rare smile on his face. The higher-ups want you leading our fraud detection division, he said. What you did in Malibu showed what you're capable of. I accepted, not for the title, but because it felt right. I'd proven myself not to Dad, but to me. Still, the fallout lingered. I'd catch myself staring at old family photos, wondering where it all went wrong. But I wasn't that kid anymore, hoping for Dad's pride. I was done. Looking back, I learned something vital from this mess. Sometimes you have to fight to protect the people you love, even if it means tearing down someone else you love. Justice matters more than family loyalty, because loyalty to a lie only traps you. I used to think family defined me, but I was wrong. Standing up for what's right, no matter the cost, gave me freedom. My warning to you is this: don't let toxic expectations hold you back. If someone, family or not, tries to control who you are, walk away. Live for what's true, not what they demand. You'll find peace in that, like I did. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up and breaking free. Drop a comment below, share your own experience with toxic family or fighting for justice. I'd love to hear how you found your strength. Your story might inspire someone else just like mine.